Hello, everyone. It's Fiona Marks here from fionamarks.com. And today I have a case study to share with you, a fascinating chart to look at that I've just had the opportunity to read and have permission to talk about all of the goings on in the chart. So today, just sit back. I think this is going to be a long video. Maybe it's something that you pause and come back to, but if you want to get a sense of how I read a chart and how I interweave the complexities of the chart, this might be a chance to see a real person, not a celebrity, and my analysis of the chart. So I'm starting off with you sharing my screen. You can see on the left we have color, and that's how I have my color set up when I'm researching the chart, with the yoga judgment scores here in the top of the middle column, the Lajatatiya Vashta's table in the middle, the dignities throughout the Vargas at the bottom of the middle column. And then in my floating chart, I like to have this one available for transits or Varga charts. And at the bottom of the right column, I have the Shadbala table with the details of the totals of each of the 6 strengths and what percentage that is for each strength. And then on the right of my screen, I have my notes page here at the top and my themes document at the bottom. So what I do first of all is collate into the top. When I look at a chart, I collate and write down all of these different things, as you'll see here. And then once I've collated all of that, I try to sit down in one session and read it all and write down themes here in a separate document. So you can see my setup. This is a person who contacted me because they were interested in finding out about why they were experiencing life as they were. And they asked me, people can ask 3 questions when they register their session. They asked me questions about what was the karma of this lifetime, what were the planets trying to teach them, and how should they best approach life going forward. So those were the general questions, but in the context of the emails that had been exchanged, I had an awareness that the person had not yet found their career and perhaps doubted which direction to go, but they didn't directly ask that question. Okay, so let's have a look at the notes page first, just to give you an idea of what I do. I usually start off by writing down what ascendant it is. Something about that is very calming for me. I think you've seen in other videos that when one first begins to read charts, it can be a bit overwhelming because either intuitively a lot of information comes to you at one time and it can be hard to structure that and capture the significance of all of that intuition that's coming at the same time. Or it can be the case that one knows a lot of techniques and has been a great student, but the real life chart, where does one actually begin? So in all of my practice of reading charts, I developed this little thing of writing down which ascendant it is. And that is because I really enjoy the understanding of a chart that comes from looking at the ascendant yogas, at the way a planet performs, just because for that ascendant, in this case, for example, the first house ruler, Venus, also rules the 8th house. So we know that this person's life path and their body and their personality is linked also to the 8th house, which is change and transformation, sudden, unexpected things and other people's money, you know, all of those sorts of indications. And you go through each of those ascendant combinations, and it gives a richness about which planets work well for which ascendants, and how planets that maybe do work well but are in bad placements, how significant that is, and equally planets that don't work well but are in good placements, maybe working better than one would expect. So I usually write down the Libra ascendant, and then I go to my notes and I copy paste the ascendant yogas into this document. And then before I get started any deeper than that, I roughly and quickly look at the yogas in the chart by house placement. So I just write down Rahu is in the second house. Then I write the third and the sixth lord is in the third. And if that brings anything to me, I write down next to it a short note. So if I had written something for third and sixth in 3, I might have written something about it being a difficult houses combination or hard work around self-effort. Then working around clockwise in the chart, the next place I see here, I've got the first lord, the 8th lord, the 9th lord, and the 12th lord all in the 5th house. So that's what I've written here. And I just noticed to myself that I've got some beautiful Raj Yogas there. I've got the first with the 9th. I've got the first in the 5th. I've got the 9th in the 5th. It's, you know, all of my trinal lords or trinal houses are really resonating here. But I can notice that I've also got inverted commas difficult houses, the 8th and the 12th, and that they're both moksha houses. So that this person's dharma and their moksha are very linked together, and that whatever grace there is from the 159 is definitely going to have an enlightenment flavor to it. Can also notice straight away that obviously the 5th house is getting quite some energy there because I've got 2 planets in it. Moving along, we've got the 6th house with the 4th and 5th lord with the 11th in the 6th. And right away, I noticed that that natural Raj Yoga for Libra ascendants, the 4th and 5th lord is actually with the 11th lord, which is considered a yoga breaker, a deal breaker for that grace. And not only that, but it's in the 6th house, a difficult house. So I'm imagining that this person can feel the potential of 4 and 5, of having one's contentment and happiness and one's heart, one's inner joy, naturally linked to changing and improving one's life. Those two feel really good together. They're ruled by Saturn for a Libra ascendant, but they're right there with the 11th lord, in this case, the sun, breaking that. So the person may feel almost like that contentment, that grace of the Raj Yoga is on the tip of their tongue. It's so close to being materialized, but there's also a disappointment that it never comes to fruition. And so I find that people feel both. They feel the potential of the graceful yoga and the disappointment, the frustration of it never coming to fruition. So I just noticed that. We've got the 10th lord in the 8th house with Ketu, perhaps a lack of satisfaction with career, maybe lots of changing with career because it's in the 8th house. I know that this person has written to me in the context of that, so I'm sort of seeing a confirmation there. And then I see that the 2nd and 7th lord is in the 11th, and I just noticed that that's lots of financial numbers together. So I do this very quickly just to get a layout of the chart before I dive into the details. I don't spend much time on it, and I don't get stressed or hooked up that I've seen everything or I haven't seen anything. It's just like my very first rough cut of what some of the main energies in the chart are. And I might make some notes in directly under that about some main features, which is it just screams out to me how agitated Saturn is, equally the sun. And I noticed that it's been taken into minus points by the sun's agitation. Of course, we've also got the Mars is agitating as well. So I noticed that Saturn's extremely agitated. And I also noticed that the moon is in Mula Trikona. So I might make some comments like that. And that's where I take a breath, and I've kind of had a look at what the main hills and valleys in the chart. Now I go into the detail, and I go house by house for each house that has a planet in it, is my way of making sure that I cover everything, but without going through each of the 12 houses. So I say something about what planet is in there. Rahu is in Mars' house. Mars is neutral. And I just also check in with Saturn's journey from the D1 to the D9, goes from friend to great enemy. And that can tell us a little bit about how the Rahu journey is going to go. And then I copy paste all that I have in my notes and what I've collected about what it means to have Rahu in the second house. And for example, those notes at the start there come, if you have Kala, they come from this delineations. The Ernst has already programmed in here a lot of thoughts about Rahu and Ketu. And so I would copy those into the chart. And I keep doing that with everything that I know, with my notes from my astrology training. I just dump it all into here. And then I do the same thing now starting on the third house. Okay, Jupiter, it's in Yuva, it's Jagrat, it's in own home, it's 6th in Shadbala, it's good in the Vargas, and it's got an okay positive yoga score. So that's what I tell myself, like a status update about Jupiter. And then I go into the details of what exactly is causing that Shadbala score. In this case, we've got a low Ayana Bala. You can see it's right here in Sagittarius, very close to that solstice point, giving the person trouble in understanding the conflict, the context of adversity, and being able to see that suffering has any purpose at all, having difficulty with that. And we also notice that Jupiter is the only planet in this chart that has negative Drikbala. That is, when one wants to study, move in the direction of knowledge, religion, faith, children, money, creativity, negative things get in the way there. All right, and then, same thing. I just dump in here all of the things that I know. Here are the ascendant yogas about Jupiter ruling the 3rd and the 6th. Disease, difficulty with friends, interest the mind in the critical nature of the mind, leading a person towards being idealistic in an unhelpful way. And then I look at the Bhava Yogas from the Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, and I just note what resonates with that placement of Jupiter and those Bhava Yogas. And I keep doing this throughout the whole chart until I have, you can see in this case, there was 11 pages of notes about the houses. Let's just take you down, because once I've done the houses, I then also have a look at the core yogas. Okay, keeping going. Ketu coming through to Mars, the last planet that we're looking at. And then, in this case, I didn't. I just had a look at the cards of truth. But at the end, I would look at the core yogas here in Kala and work out which ones apply and how much good they have. But I'll show you where that is. Okay, so that would be my resource document. Now I've got all the information about the chart, and I go through and read that and pull out some themes. So that was a look at the back room. Now let's imagine that we are getting ready to speak to this client. What are the things that we're going to pick out in the chart? And that's where I come down here to the themes. I just begin by talking about some notable features of the chart. We can notice that all of these planets in the D1 are in good dignity, and that's a notable feature. That's not the case with every chart, so I would bring that up and mention that to the client. I would also talk about that we have all planets here basically with 100% of the potency they need to achieve their agenda, and that is not always the case either. So we have in our arsenal, all of our planets have the potency that they need. What I would notice also about this chart is that we have 5 planets in Yuva Avashta. We've got the Sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. That's quite a lot of planets to have in Yuva, meaning that this lifetime offers the chance for these karmas to come into our life to be resolved. They are ripe, they are ready to be experienced. Whereas, for example, the moon is in Mrita, meaning that karma has nearly spent itself. And Venus is in Bala, meaning it's only just beginning its journey. So this for me feeds into that theme that the client not knowing which direction to take. Part of the context of that can be that so many planets are vying for their karma to be experienced that we can be distracted or pulled in many directions, because there's lots of opportunities here in this lifetime for us to move forward in our extinguishing of karma. And then here are where I popped in the core yogas for this session, because there were just 2 that I was interested in. The first one involves Venus being with the 9th Lord and being with Mercury in a friend or Rashi sign. Yeah, within a friend's Rashi sign. And this gives someone spiritual tendencies. And we can see that Venus particularly has a good positive yoga score. And you can get that from this table up here, taking into account the Ishta, the Shubha Digbala. We come up with the formula, and Venus altogether has quite a positive yoga score. So there may be some grace here in this person's life around spirituality, spiritual tendencies. And that certainly has been the case when I spoke to the client. So beautiful yoga to notice there. And then another lovely yoga with Jupiter in its own Rashi and 8th from the moon, as making person an inheritor of a lineage. So we've got Jupiter in its own home here in Sagittarius. We've got the moon 6 houses away from Jupiter, or Jupiter being 8 houses away from the moon. So it depends which way you want to count it. Jupiter, we do have a positive yoga score of 4.6. The moon, we have a positive yoga score of 8.7. So we are seeing this grace in the chart. And in this particular case, this client has a father who is very demanding in a way of this person, wants the best for this person and wants them to be successful, and so encourages them and challenges them, keeps on their case to be successful. However, at the same time, this father is successful himself and is able to support this client financially, and obviously with this guidance and with this coaching and attention. So it's interesting, the inheritor of a lineage here, perhaps we'll see that that opportunity for this client to work in the father's business, to carry that on in some way. And it's interesting that we talk about the father in that context, because the moon is the 10th Lord, which can represent the father. So it's interesting that lineage that we're speaking about happens to be the father. And we know that this moon Ketu combination we're going to talk about has its difficulties. So we can see why the moon perhaps having that challenging relationship. The moon is in Mula Trikona in Taurus, very close to its exaltation point. It is a benefic moon. So this is why, although the father is, in Portuguese we would say exigente, which I think is the best, is demanding, someone that keeps on the case. They are, they've got the sweetness of the moon as well, the sweetness of the moon in Taurus. While we just take a quick detour to talk about the father, we can also notice that if we looked at the generic karaka for father, then we've got the sun. The sun is in this mutual agitation situation here in the 6th house. So that we are finding that the father is demanding. And on our case, I think we can see with these 2 indicators for the moon, the father, the moon and the sun, both got those challenging difficulties associated in our relationship with them. Okay, so those were the core yogas that stood out to me. And the other obvious thing is this 6th house that we just began to talk about, the Sun and Saturn conjunct in the 6th house of Pisces. Not only conjunct, but they are within minutes of each other, like not even half a degree apart from each other. So very, very close. In fact, if you look at all the Vargas, these 2 planets stay together in all the Vargas all the way through, apart from the D45, and then they're back together in the D60. So this is an energy in the chart that is resonating so true or so profoundly, so clearly in this person's energetic makeup, the Sun and Saturn. And if we have a look at, we just go and have a look at the Lajatati Avashtas for that. When we've got the Sun agitated by Saturn, the person's self-esteem and lack are agitated together and become inseparable in the person's identity. In order to exist, the person must be the best, but equally, in the act of existence, the person is acutely aware of their flaws. The person's confidence only comes from defending their greatness. The person has to lead in order to feel great. Inside the person, there is a great deal of doubt and a lack of peace. I think that lack of peace, we can all identify with how this combination would cause that. And if we look at Saturn agitated by the Sun, we've got the person's flaws and greatness are agitated together. They can't become inseparable in the person's identity. The person is aggressively defensive about any flaws. The person appears tough, but because they cannot separate themselves from their weakness, they cannot share their greatness with others and they cannot be authentic. The person cannot get any perspective on their flaws because of this enmeshment. And so they cannot understand their role. And this creates frustration. So let me just minimize that again. There we go. So this combination, the Sun agitating Saturn, Saturn agitating the Sun, is a very strong feature in the chart when we're talking about these notable features. When I spoke to the client about this, I was talking about it's a little bit like Harry Potter and Voldemort. If you've had a chance to read the books or see the movies, that these inseparable opposites that can't survive without each other are just kind of determined to destroy the other, even though that destruction costs them everything that they have. And in a way, actually, it makes them better. Or if we look at it from the Harry Potter character, it makes him better. It's this constant challenge, the constant threat, that constant pressure. It makes the life unconventional. If you look at Harry Potter's life, kind of going off on a tangent here, but he's not very good at school. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. He's not popular. He doesn't have great teachers necessarily. But this dynamic with Voldemort leaves him with no choice but to become great. However, the doubts that he has inside of himself about that, and his own evilness, so this is kind of that energy that we're talking about here with Sun and Saturn. It's a very strong feature in the chart. And the other thing that's really interesting about Sun and Saturn is that they are the opposite ends of the solar system. However, they share in their own ways, they share many similar qualities. And one of them is consistency, that the sun is consistent and steadfast. You know, a great sun in someone's chart just means we have that discipline to turn up every day and to do what we say that we're going to do, be consistent. Like the sun coming up every day, doesn't matter what season it is, what weather it is, no matter what, the sun comes up. So when we think of a strong sun in someone's chart, we know that it gives them this steadfast consistency. And at the other end of the solar system, at the other end of the spectrum, we have Saturn. And Saturn is consistent as well in its own way, because Saturn is the servant. If we look at that kingdom analogy, where Sun is the king and does things through inspiration and inspires people with his leadership and light, Saturn does things the servant has to do, which is, you know, clean out the latrines and cook and clear the table and clean up after people and be invisible and just do all of those undesirable jobs without complaining. That's what a servant does. There's no point in being complaining, because you're just going to get kicked. You know, this is your job. You have to do it. And this gives Saturn a quality of plodding forward without looking for reward or meaning. Just, it's as if you set the servant in that direction, and then without questioning the meaning or the purpose, the servant does that task. Doesn't matter how unpleasant it is, Saturn has the gift to do that work for no reward, for no recognition, but every day do the same unrewarding work that is essential for survival, that no one will ever recognize. So both of these planets in their own way give the person a consistency. And here they are attacking each other to the death. And I think that this can bring for the client real difficulties in being consistent. And where is this taking place? It's in the 6th house of daily grind, of the things that we have to do every day that seem as if we get no reward for them, like brushing our teeth every day, all of our life, in the hope that we'll have teeth when we're 80. But you won't see that reward. You know, your 5-year-old self doesn't see that reward. Your 20-year-old self doesn't see that. Your 40-year-old self doesn't see that reward. But that 40-year-old self must continue this daily practice of brushing the teeth. So the 6th house has that grind element, routine element. And here we have the two planets that give us consistency, kind of using their energy against each other. So this person may struggle with consistency in those daily routines. And we know that Pisces is a moksha house of transcending. So we may see this in consistency around applying discipline to spirituality as well. So that's a feature in the chart, the Saturn-Sun combination. We've also got another notable feature in the chart is Rahu in the 2nd house. Rahu and Ketu on the 2-8 axis is profoundly fascinating. It's about resources. It's about trusting life to support you versus being solely responsible on your own for your own resources. So this is an axis, the 2-8 axis, that gives the person an experience of insecurity financially, a lot of motivation around becoming more financially secure, but also gives the experience perhaps of losing that support as a way of promoting the person to turn within and find inside themselves that strength that is unaffected by material fluctuations. So one knows that that one can be honest with life, be receptive to life, because one has a strength of connection with the true self. Of course, this is a Libra ascendant, so we have to remember that while this is Rahu in the second and Ketu in the eighth, it is also Rahu in the eighth sign and Ketu in the second sign. So that's why there's going to be this mixture of experiences around being supported by other people's money in the eighth house or in the eighth sign of Scorpio. There's also going to be this fascination with being responsible for my own resources and being a very responsible person versus learning to trust life and be supported by other people's money. So those themes are going to play out in a not just two-dimensional, it's almost four-dimensional, because of Libra ascendant, it's being stimulated on both ends at the same time. So that's a notable feature of the chart. And we have Rahu Dasha as the Dasha of childhood. So perhaps this person has experienced a lot of disorientation around what I should do with my life. Who am I? How responsible? How do I be responsible? And psychologically, who am I? All because we've got Rahu in the second house, in the eighth sign, as that formative from 3 to 21, as laid out in the Vimshatari Dasha here on color at the moment. Okay, so Rahu, a notable feature of the chart. Now, we talked about this natural Raj Yoga for all Libra ascendants, which is Saturn ruling the 4th and the 5th, is being broken by the 11th Lord. This is going to give, I believe, an experience of great disappointment around happiness, of feeling that I could be happy. I could be the king of my own domain, changing my own life, taking my life where I want it and feeling really happy about it, but it just won't manifest. And not only that, but the Saturn is receiving massive damage in the Lajatadhyavastas from the Sun, 456 points, and from Mars, 628 points, let's say. Saturn is the 7th planet in Shadbala, that is the weakest, the least potent planet, and it's being here attacked by Sun, 3rd, and Mars, 2nd. So we're getting a lot of attack there. Sorry, let me just fix that up. That says 1st and 2nd, but what we really mean is 3rd. Right. Now, Jupiter, we spoke about as well. It's very south in the chart. This is going to give challenges with seeing the context, the meaning, the purpose in suffering and adversity. It is, I always think of Jupiter here when it's struggling with Ayana Bala, reminds me very much of Arjuna and the Bhagavad Gita, of Arjuna having that moment in the chariot before the battle starts and turning to Krishna with everything set to go and all of the righteous reasons why the only way to solve this conflict was through battle. But Arjuna losing that perspective at that moment, and Krishna talking all of us through this enormous context of life. So when Jupiter is south in the chart, one can struggle with seeing that big picture. And we talked about Jupiter also having that negative Drikbala. But all of that, for me, fits in the context of that there is a lot of 5-8 energy in this chart, or really there's a lot of 5. If we look this person up on the cards of truth, they are a 5 of spades. I don't necessarily read the cards very much, but I think that they can be really affirming of what you're seeing in the chart already. And when we think about the 5, we know the number 5, it's an uneven number. It's that pentagram shape. It's got a lot of tension to change, pressure to change. It's all those odd numbers. They've got this instability that, it's evolving. And so the 5 is really about evolving and changing. When it's the spades, it's going to have that inner psychology inside of myself, the way I view my world kind of experience with it. And if you looked at the cards of truth, it's also got a jack of, let's just bring that up for you. We've got this jack of spades also on the ecliptic path, meaning a lot of pressure being put on this to promote this change and improvement. So someone who is here to improve body, mind, and spirit. Now, we have 4 house lords also in the 5th house. One of them is the ascendant. We've got the 5th house filled with Rajasic planets. So a lot of energy in this wanting to change, perhaps excitement inside the self around change and improvement. But at the same time, we all know that Mercury and Venus can be distracting because they've got so much Rajasic energy. We also have the 8th Lord in the 5th. Now we know the 8th is unexpected changes, and it's right there in the 5th house of change. So we're kind of getting a theme again. We've got the 1st Lord in the 5th. We have the 5th Lord being, I don't know what you want to say, being lit by the sun, you know, like our soul is really looking at the 5th Lord there, but it's agitating the 5th Lord. The 5th Lord is with the 11th Lord. Changing one's life should be a source of happiness, but it's spoiled by this 11th Lord yoga breaker. And the moon is really close to exalted in the 8th house with Ketu. So that's what I mean, that there's a real 5th house and 8th house theme, or 5th and 8th. Those numbers are very powerful in the chart. This is a chart that is asking the person to improve their life on every level, definitely internally, psychologically, spiritually. So then I would go through all of the main themes by planet. Now, I wouldn't necessarily talk these through with the client only because I just don't have time. But here, that's what I was saying about it's being a long video. Sit back, get another cup of tea. Let's go through some of these main themes that maybe we haven't touched on yet by planet. Rahu in the 2nd house can lead us to be devalued by the family. We want validation from the family. Being in the 2nd house can give us addictive tendencies because we've got the mouth, you know, it's what we take in. It can make us not speak the truth. The need is to value the self, but we project value onto the family there in the 2nd house, that immediate family, and it may desert the person because of Ketu wanting to promote that we become responsible. Ketu there is in the 8th house of other people's money. It's going to maybe withdraw that security from the family as a way to make sure that Rahu in the 2nd gets that chance to be independently responsible. In Scorpio, Rahu can give us insatiable needs, and we must turn within. The person doesn't know what they seek. And this is a bit of a theme for this person. As we said, they came, I'll just highlight that because I haven't pulled these themes together at the end. In some ways, they came for an astrology reading because they don't know what their passion is, what their purpose is, what is it they're supposed to do. So having Rahu in Scorpio, person doesn't know what they seek, need to turn within to find security, realize that they don't need other people's money for security by losing it and finding inner strength. So that's what we were saying about this Rahu-Ketu combination. It's going to make the theme of financial security a constant source of motivation and thinking and worries throughout the lifetime. Jupiter, we have spoken about. It is the current Dasha Lord. We know it's got the low Ayana Bala and the low Drik Bala, so negative things get in the way of Jupiter characters by active planetary aspect. This is a difficult planet for a Libra ascendant in general because friends, the 3rd house, and the mind, the 3rd house, can become enemies. We need to be aware of not becoming zealous about religion or idealistic, kind of fanatical. Jupiter ruling 3 and 6. And then just looking at those, how house lord combinations, we've got the third in the third can make someone impulsive. Obviously, if it was Rahu or Mars, we'd be really feeling that. Can make someone fearful, can make a person lack ambition, find themselves with problematic peers. They may overcompensate and try to act more skilled than they are. And they can lack integrity. And when it's 6 in the third, there can be fights with teammates. Person doesn't feel that they can express their unique talents, or that those talents are delayed. 6th house, 6th lord tries too hard to improve problems or improve one's health. Prone to injury in the neck, upper back, arms and hands, and can stop us from taking the initiative. So a tricky combination to work with, 3rd in third and 6th in third. But it is Jupiter. It's going to try and do its best for us. And as the current Dasha Lord, may be giving us a focus on our daily routine. So allowing us to see the spiritual Jupiter, see the spiritual benefit of putting our own effort, 3rd house, into daily practices. So Jupiter will try its best to work its best with these difficult numbers. Venus is the next planet. If we go around clockwise, it also has low Ayana Bala. This means that it's love of harmony, and that everyone should benefit from conflict, just really doesn't go down very well in the south part of the chart, where it's kind of dog eat dog, man eat man, however you say that. So it can be a bit ineffective, Venus approach to conflict and adversity. It's being starved by the moon, wanting to merge our emotions with someone else, meaning it making it hard for us to meet our emotional needs independently. It's very good in the Vargas and has an excellent yoga score. This is the Ascendant Lord. It's in the 1st house. It's the 1st house Lord in the 5th house. This can mean that the self has a real connection with mantra. Also puts the self in the context of government, but may mean that we can't think clearly, and the 5th house being an indicator of our past life karma as well. Put that in that cannot think clearly around just having Mercury there, there's that distraction of the Rajasic energy. And then Venus is also the 8th Lord in the 5th house. So creativity can come in bursts. We've got the 5th Lord of creativity, the 8th Lord of, unexpected changes, like, changeable energy. May have a trust fund, cannot focus well on creative or athletic endeavors. The mind may be obsessed with sex or taboo topics, the 5 and 8 there, and can have trouble making improvement in life or lacking discernment. So this may, all of those 8-5 indicators may indicate some of the reasons why this client came for an astrology session, struggling with that consistency around changing my life or taking my life in the direction that I want it to go. And we can understand that as the 8th Lord ruling being the ruler of the 8th house in the 5th, brings that lack of consistency, which is exactly what we already talked about with the Sun and Saturn. And it's right there with Mercury. Mercury is the 9th Lord in the 5th. We've got to be careful that this doesn't make us expect life to be easier than it is, right? The 9th and the 5th, 2 very graceful numbers. We can get education but not earn it, and maybe lack the capacity to work hard. So that's that, again, the 9 and the 5, just highlighting so much grace that maybe we're not actually getting traction with this real world, this real rocky dirt world. And the 12th and the 5th could have romantic problems due to affairs and have difficulty learning or poor short-term memory. Moving to the 6th house, we have the Sun. It has low Digbala, so that can prevent us from hearing when it's time to take action. And it's also got low Chestabala, lacking confidence to shine from the front. I think this do not take action thing here, this goes in really nice. I'm going to highlight again around the not knowing what to do And this person with the Digbala is the ability to hear how the planet is directing us. And for the sun, that would mean how the planet is inspiring us, how our soul is inspiring us. And this layout of the chart makes it hard for us to hear that. So what is my inspiration? And then that goes really nicely with being starred by Venus, gives too much value to to other people's opinions, and not able to stand strong in our own inspiration. So that could be some of the context that's led to this. What am I supposed to be doing with my life if we can't really hear the sun as strongly? Now we know that it's being agitated by Saturn. In order to exist, the person must be the best, but they're aware acutely of their own flaws, giving a great lack of inner peace. I think that the person must be the best here goes so well with this chart being a chart of improvement. This is a chart where the person is being asked to improve. All of that fifth house energy, the ascendant lord being in the fifth, Mercury, if you notice, is also the Atmakaraka. It's in the fifth. This is a life to change and improve. And here is the sun. Of course, no one wants to be agitated by Saturn, so it's not a pleasant experience, but it makes us want to be the best. And that is fueling, promoting this motivation to change and improve. In the yogas, we've got the 11th lord in the 6th house. We need to be careful around being deceptive, falling for getting rich quick, aggressively pursuing dreams that harms one's own life, and prone to accidents. Finances can be blocked or delayed, and success comes late. So some challenges of the 11th lord being in the 6th house there. And Saturn is a natural Raj Yoga, but it's with the 11th lord. It's got low Chester Bala, making it hard to be real with life, with suffering, because we fear that we won't be strong enough. It's also obviously combust by the sun, so it feels overwhelmed by life, as if they were never given a fair chance. They lack the discipline and perseverance and want to find an easy way. They need validation, but they can never find that validation. Also, Saturn is being agitated by the sun, can't separate themselves from their weaknesses. They can't share their greatness with others in an authentic way. It's hard for this person to get any perspective on their flaws because they're so enmeshed with the sun, with their soul. They cannot understand their role in any failures that occur, and this creates frustration. Also, even more strongly, it's being starved by Mars, by Lajatati Avashta, and this can make the person feel so flawed that they just feel like they can never catch up, that they're always behind the starting line. They feel very time pressured. This reminds me of, if you've ever seen those races, where we normally see the 100 meters, for example, they all start on the same starting line. There's this other style of racing where you take into account the pedigree of the racer, and you give them a further and further back from the starting line, starting position, so that people of different abilities theoretically are getting the same opportunity, because the start line is different for each person, meaning for the better people, the start line is further away from the finish line. These kind of scratch races, and being starved by Mars is a bit like that, that the starting gun goes off and you can see all of these people, they're already way ahead of you. They're already achieving their goals and their tasks, and you've only just started and you're so far behind. It doesn't matter what you do, you can never catch up. So this chart has a lot of that energy. You can see here in the Lajatati Avasta, there's a lot of damage to Saturn, which is already the weakest planet by Shadbala. So it's a strong experience. When we have the 4th lord in the 6th house, it naturally makes us think about helping and healing injured and oppressed people. Can be prone to emotionally related health issues, chest injuries, and can be prone to domestic abuse, 4th house, 6th house. And when it's the 5th lord in the 6th house, sometimes we can say it doesn't get along well with others, feel the need to defend oneself constantly. The mind can be combative or stubborn, or an angry mind. And coming around to the moon, we've got it really well placed. It's the strongest Bhaishad Bala, even though it's low in Ayana Bala, meaning that actually the moon does well in the south, where it kind of adapts to how life is and is able to flow with conflict and find a way to get to solutions in a very flowing way. But in the north, it can make the moon sort of stick to its principles and in some way perhaps have a tantrum about things, of being very stuck rather than flowing. It is noticeable that not only is the moon with a malefic, which we're going to speak about obviously, but it is surrounded by empty space, and then the closest planets to it are malefics on both sides. So this moon, the mind, the emotions, the personality, is, although well placed in Taurus, so lovely placement, it is a bit isolated, and the influences around the moon are all malefic. And here's another saving grace in the chart. When the moon is exalted, which in this case it's not, but it's so close that I think we want to look at that energetic resonance that comes from being at the beginning of Taurus. The person is able to take responsibility for their thoughts and feelings. And I think this is really the case with this client. So we're building up, as we look at this picture, really some quite difficult indications, very challenging chart, real intense pressure around improving the self. And one can see how a temptation would be to take the easy way out, to avoid this. And perhaps it is the moon, although it is not in an easy position with all of the planets that are influencing it, but being in Taurus, where it is the happiest, allowing us to take responsibility for our thoughts and feelings, has perhaps unlocked a key here for this person, that they are seeing through the little traps that are set in there, or the big traps that are set in their chart. So this placement, be very lucky and auspicious. And let's bring that now to being with Ketu. This can create discontent with the world, make us an introverted person, give us an interest in psychology, but also make us moody. The developmental goal, and this just comes straight from the yogas here in Kala, from the modern yogas. It's the goal of the moon and Ketu together is to purge the mind from subconscious pain, remorse, and regret, and to truly remain at peace amidst the varying conditions of life. We're ready to let go of that controlling of the feelings and the emotions. It is liberating us from our ego. And the person can want to avoid this. So they may end up hurting themselves in order to get away from emotions. And this may be where that very good placement of the moon is helping so much here with this person. But in another chart, one might rather injure the body than experience the pain of these pent-up emotions that Ketu is indicating that in past lifetimes we have, instead of allowing emotions to flow, we have dammed that river of emotions and controlled them. And now in this lifetime, we're left with an energetic memory imprint of these pent-up emotions that now we're getting the opportunity to express. They might not be related to anything that's going on in the chart, which is why we get this tag moody. Maybe these moods come over the person, but it's like a purging process. So how healthy that is for the psyche and for our next evolutionary impulses, if we can return the moon to flowing, the emotions flowing. Right, and that's what the next dot point says. So I've gotten ahead of myself. Yep, suggestion here is to use the moon with the emotions in the real world. So sort of turn on the tap again, allow that emotion to flow, and save that Ketu part for meditation, where it's such a great indicator. Now, where we have the 10th Lord in the 8th house, obviously psychology, research, digging into the depth of things, secret work, can have difficulty sticking to a profession or finding fulfillment in one's work, can cheat to get ahead in a career, sabotage one's own success. Psychological problems can prevent the ability to work, can steal other people's resources, and tell lies. So we've got, looking at, both of these things, there are obviously the 10th Lord in the 8th house is going to help us jump to that conclusion of being a psychologist, a psychoanalyst, especially with Ketu there. But it can also, if the moon was not so well placed at the very beginning of Taurus, maybe give us this take the easy way out, cheat a little bit, get ahead in manipulative ways, because this probably gives us an ability to read people, read their emotions. And I think that this could be a great con man, or someone who is able to manipulate others to get what they want. So what a blessing to have the moon so beautifully placed in Taurus, giving us, remember, this exalted moon, able to take responsibility for thoughts and feelings. And this is the key in this particular trap, is to understand that I might have all of the skills here to swindle my way out of taking any responsibility for anything. Now I've got Rahu in the 2nd house of responsibility, obscuring that, making it delusional. And now I've got, the 10th Lord in the 8th house. And yet the key here, which is so powerful to free this chart, is that exalted moon, well, very close to exalted moon, the ability to take responsibility for my own thoughts and feelings, that actually this is all the shit that I have to deal with in this lifetime. There's no getting away from it. It doesn't matter if I lie and cheat and scam my way out of pain or away from pain. That pain is it's not going anywhere. I can't outrun it. I can just, incarnate again and experience it all over again. So the moon here, the mind, the personality, the ego, has actually, by this placement, given us the key that this is my stuff to deal with. This is my lifetime to take responsibility, and can really pivot this chart, because then that 6th house, which we were talking about, Harry Potter, Voldemort, death roll, actually becomes an intensely powerful 6th house of applying myself to daily habits. Plus we have Jupiter, the current Dasha Lord, trying to promote the 6th house as well. So yeah, a beautiful key here in that great placement from the moon. With Ketu, we've talked about this a little bit already. It's in the 8th. It's going to make us insecure about our financial potential. It is going to allow us to receive other people's money, but we may feel like we are being attacked psychically. In Taurus, Ketu gives us a growing discontent with material wealth, as well as a tendency to disrupt any material structures of security, because it wants to do that to free us from our attachments, making us unable to find security in the material world. Though we may make half-hearted attempts to do that, but it's really trying to promote that turning inside the self and finding that security within. So if we can transmute that experience of insecurity into a whole different game, it's like we change the winning conditions. If we feel very insecure when the rules of winning the game is whoever's got the most money wins the game. But when we can transmute that and realize whoever has a secure connection to their true nature of existence wins the game, because then no matter how much money you have in your pocket, you've already won. Okay, Mars, the final planet as we go around clockwise, it's exalted in the D10. So just a very interesting thing to notice when the person is talking about career. And in fact, this person does have an athletic pursuit that is sort of Martian or sort of military. So good to note that that is exalted in the D10. Second in the 11th, financial wealth, family supports achieving one's desires, makes money any way one can, but financial opportunities never seem to pan out, and poor earning capacity. So we've got both there. We've mentioned that the Atmakaraka is Mercury, also in the 5th house. So while I wouldn't normally go through that with every client, I would probably come and answer their questions and try to weave all of that in there. So let's wrap this long video up with the kind of things that we talk to the client about. I would be highlighting this 5th house energy. We've got the ascendant Lord Venus in the 5th house. We've got the Atmakaraka Mercury in the 5th house. We've got a birth card that is also a 5. And we have the 9th Lord in the 5th house. So this is a lifetime. Why am I here is the question. Who am I? I am here to change, to detox. The moon and Ketu, that developmental goal of purging the mind. Only the person can do this, because this transformation is a psychological, spiritual transformation. It can look to others as if you are in rehab, as if you are the one, you know, that person who has absorbed toxins, maybe has had a drug addiction, and you go into rehab. It looks like you're a failure. You know, everybody's like, oh, they've, you know, they're not successful, they're in rehab. And not only can we project that onto the person, but that process of detoxing, of getting those toxins and poisons out of the body, you know, might be purging. There might be, you know, there's cold sweats and all of that psychological elements of that. There might be vomiting or other ways that this poison is coming out of the body that on the outside does not look like success. But for anyone who has a loved one who has successfully come through that rehab or detox, you know that that is the best work. That is the most healing work, the most inspiring work that they can possibly do. And any other option other than purging this stuff through rehab is avoiding, it's escaping. And there's no success there in returning to a life of taking drugs or changing the drug that you're taking so that you're still escaping, but it's a different addiction. So this lifetime of this chart is around doing the rehab, doing the hard work that is not pleasant, but purges the psyche, the soul of these things that need to be improved. And this person's got that amazing motivator to be improved because of that Sun Saturn agitation. The inspiration for this person to be great and to be hyper aware of their flaws is all set up so that engine keeps fueling the motivation to change and improve, something that only this person can do. Then that may lead them to be an inspiring figure, a healer or a guide, if they do that detox. If they feel their feelings and they let them flow, this is someone who has that potential to be inspiring because they've walked that very hard road. And in this lifetime, that there's going to be a tremendous stress and pressure to be very motivated to do that change. This pressure is helping the person to improve their health and psychological, spiritual well-being. I'm seeing this a bit like changing carbon or charcoal into diamond, that you need to put a lot of pressure and a lot of heat and hold that and maintain it. And then from this charcoal, or, you know, this black, dusty, fragile element that you have in your hands, if you can put it under enough pressure, those carbon atoms are going to arrange themselves in the most stable and beautiful formation so that they're crystal clear and the hardest substance we know, right? Diamonds. So it seems to me that this lifetime, when the person asks, you know, what am I here for? Why have I incarnated? This is a detox rehab experience with a lot of pressure to change, for the purpose of changing charcoal into diamonds. It's not going to be pleasant. And we talked about, when directly asked, it wasn't one of the questions, but it came up in the session, you know, what should I do? Like, what career should I do? And we talked about different options. But in some ways, this life is the kind of life where, if you want to, for example, improve your tennis, you go stand at one end of the court and you put Novak Djokovic at the other end of the court. And when Novak starts serving to you, you're not going to make one single return ever. And weeks will go by. You'll just, hour after hour after hour, have Novak Djokovic serve at you, and you're just not going to get there. But as long as you stay present, you put in your effort, those thousands and thousands of misses that look like failures to everyone else, they are one by one improving you. And out of the blue, somewhere, first week, second week, third week, you're going to return one ball, or you're going to get the edge of your racket on one ball. And then keep facing those serves. You're going to fully return one of those serves. And then over time, you're going to regularly, you know, return 1 in 10 or 1 in 5. And that is this kind of lifetime, that it doesn't matter in some ways what this person does, because the dynamics in the chart are so set up to help the person be motivated to improve, that whatever they do, they will improve. And they will face a lot of failure in doing that, if you consider missing the balls from Novak Djokovic to be failure. And that's what we tend to, you know, we think we should be able to return every serve. This is a lifetime where the success is in standing at that baseline and receiving those serves, because little by little by little, you're improving all the time. Do not get discouraged that the opponent on the other side of the net is serving things at you that you're failing, in inverted commas, to return, because by facing them, that is the process of returning, of improving. So this is a little bit where we pivot, or we transmute that, what is success, when you realize that success is turning up and honestly, authentically facing those serves from Novak Djokovic with the intention to return them, to hit them back, and to get better at this game of tennis. So whatever career it is that you choose, do not be discouraged that there will be many serves from Novak Djokovic that go past you, and that to other people it looks like you are not as good, you're not doing as well. But this is, in fact, what this chart is asking you to do. Really improve, really face life and improve. Yes, and then these were answering the person's questions, but I think we've covered all of that in our sessions, in our video today. The only other thoughts that I wanted to check in with this person was to be careful about lying, that there are a few indications for that in the chart. There's actually, we didn't put in here, but there's deception as well from the sun, 11 in 6. So we want to be careful about lying to the self and to others. We've got Rahu in the 2nd, we've got the moon, the 10th lord in the 8th, we've got the sun, the 11th in the 6th. This can cause us to be manipulative with the truth, and that will not serve us, but will be tempting. It's a habit that's in the energetic pattern, so be careful about that. And that goes well with the next one, which is looking for the easy way out. We've got Sun 11 in 6, we've got Mercury 9th in the 5th, expecting things to be easy, and we've got combust Saturn, would rather complain or find another easier way out of their responsibilities. So I think these are the energetic floor patterns that we want to be aware of in the chart, and take active steps to have discipline not to reinforce these two patterns around lying and taking the easy way out. Actually, when I spoke to this client, that is something that they have unpacked for themselves, and And maybe that brilliant moon, so beautiful in Taurus, has helped them take responsibility for their feelings. And what grace that is, because these two, lying and taking the easy way out, are what turns this chart then towards being a swindler or being a storyteller who's, always got the scheme and the money and chasing money from here to there, and never actually any of this money security existing in real life, but being hustling and hassling through manipulation and deception. And this person has unpicked that trap that's in the chart. So much honor to this person for their ability to take this layout of planets and find within it the discipline to apply oneself spiritually and to apply oneself to the daily grind, that sixth house potential that's there, that is going to fuel the fifth house of improvement. So, so touched to see such a young person open their eyes to those slippery poles that are in the chart. We grab a hold of them, we slide all the way down. So how touching, how inspiring to find someone who has seen those and made that commitment to not give energy to those patterns in the chart. So there we have it, an incredibly long video talking about reading a chart and what we would say to the client, what are the main themes that are in the chart. I hope that you have found it helpful, interesting, and I look forward to your comments and thoughts. Please get in touch with me if you would like to understand anything that I've shared here in the video today. All right, until the next time that we get together, stay well, and I'll see you there. Bye, everyone.